Welcome back to the kitchen. We're here another day celebrating the Gigi chocolate extravaganza. Today we are so excited to welcome our friend Meriel, who is one of our instructors here at Orson Gigi. She teaches the macaron class. While we're not holding classes, we had to get her to come back in to just come share the love, but also just to be in the kitchen again together.
I feel like really good.
It's been such an empty hole in our hearts, and so we thought this is a great way to include you guys, but also to have a class, because we're really going to the basics today, right?
Yes. This is like the beginning of college. It's a 101 class. So.
Which is something I think we always need, and always need a refresher course, because if it's not something we're doing on a regular basis, it's something that kind of gets forgotten.
Yeah.
And then you're like, wait a minute, how
do I do this
again? It will be just like riding a bike, because all of these things will come back to us. But today we're going to be making ganache. You say it differently.
I say ganache.
I've always referred to it as ganache.
I'm sure it's ganache.
But no, you say it. I love it. Because when I hear it, it's great. So however you say it, tell us what this recipe consists of.
You guys, it's the easiest thing in the whole wide world. It's literally 2 ingredients. So it is chocolate and heavy cream. So
2 amazing things that we should all have in our diets on a regular basis, right?
Amen. Yeah. Okay, so we are going to talk all the way through ganache. What I have found is that the most important thing is just to keep it basic. Don't switch up the ingredients. Try to keep it the same thing every time, and that way you won't come across mistakes. But even if you do, good old internet will help you with fixing everything. So I will show you the basics, and then if you ever come across any problems, you can always Google after the fact. Okay, so you can do dark chocolate, milk chocolate, or white chocolate. I like to do dark chocolate that is not the darkest. I prefer a couverture brand that they carry, which is 57.7% cocoa solids. And 57.7 is not that dark of a chocolate. Like, this is like practically a milk chocolate. So I really like it. It's got a great flavor, and the fat percentages are pretty high compared to a darker chocolate. So then a white chocolate. I particularly love the cookie drops, the white cookie drops.
Which this is interesting, because this is not real chocolate.
Yeah, it's not couverture, it's just compound. And just to say, you don't have to use couverture. You can use compound, it's okay. It just is something that you'll want to practice with and play with, maybe not 5 minutes before you eat the product, right? Like the end finish. I've tried using compound dark chocolate before, and I was like, that's not as good. So,
but this is the one, let me just show them real quick. This is the one that we love. We actually use this for many applications.
Yeah.
I think this is like my most purchased chocolate that I have.
Exactly.
So
I keep it for everything, but I always use it for ganache.
So why not milk?
For me, it's a taste preference. It's also less stable than a dark chocolate, and because it has so much fats. In baking, a lot of times they're giving you a recipe with ingredients, but with ganache, you're just using ratios. Since the ingredients are literally 2 things, you're playing with how much of this versus how much of this. So when we are taking into account how much fat content is in either product, we are going to be messing with the ratios. So that's why I say you want to find something that works for you, and I know this works really well, and stick with that. Because if you do try to use something else, it will come out differently.
Got it.
I like using a super non-expensive, non-brand name heavy cream. It's not as high in fat as some of the other ones that you can find. Like, I know the Costco brand.
Dairy Gold one.
The Dairy Gold. That has a really high percentage. I think it's like 40%.
It's really high.
And that will throw off my ratios, and I will always get separated ganache when I use it. So I like to use this kind. It's just a little bit less, and I know the fat content won't be thrown off. The ratios do change depending on the type of chocolate that you use. So with a dark chocolate and a heavy cream, you're going to do a 1-to-1 ratio, which is really easy. Literally equal parts. Yeah. With a white chocolate, it's 3-to-1. And depending on what you're using it for, you may want a thinner or a thicker ganache. And I find with my white chocolate, it's always 3-to-1. I never switch it up to any other ratio. It works just as well for covering a cake at 3 to 1 as it does for a drip.
Okay.
You're gonna need a scale, like you have to use a scale. I know, everyone always asks, can I just use, no, you just need to get a scale.
Well, also, it's less dishes. You know what I mean?
It's so much easier,
if anything,
guys.
we're making it easier for you. More accurate and less dishes. So
But really, the reason is because it is more accurate. What you're doing with the ratios and why it's so important is you need the actual weight of 1 to 1. If you got a cup of chips, there's all that space in between each individual chip, that will throw off your ratio. So it's not gonna work, which is so many, like that's basically the main reason it doesn't work for a lot of people is because they've like, I did a cup of chips and a cup of cream and
there's just lots
they're
of
not the
error
same.
yeah.
They're not the same weight. So you want to use a scale and don't worry about how much. It doesn't need to be exactly 200 grams. Like this is 180 because it looked great to me. Just go with what you need.
Okay. Do you do by grams or ounces?
I do it by grams because
Okay.
also grams are more accurate.
Okay. So then on a scale, it has like grams, ounces, fluid ounces.
ounces.
So I didn't know if you were being
Yeah.
specific. You're just keeping it grams.
Just keep it grams.
Okay.
Yeah. I put 180 grams in here, so I'm gonna do 180 grams of this. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're going to heat the cream. We are going to get it to a hot temperature, but before it starts to really bubble. Some people say wait until there's bubbles along the edge, and that's great. I kind of find that if I'm doing it in the microwave, that's too hard to gauge, so I just keep kind of touching it. Is it hot? Is it hot? Because you can always just, once you've added it to your chips, put it in the microwave again. So it's really forgiving if you haven't overheated your cream. So that's why I kind of, play it safe.
Air on the side of lower.
Yeah, I do it about 30 seconds, depending on how much is in here.
Okay.
This I would do 30 seconds. If I'm like making a tiny bit of ganache and I'm only using like, a little dish of it, it would be like 10 seconds. Yeah, you'll start burning your cream. So, okay, so I have heated it for 30 seconds. It is warm, it's not hot. So I'm gonna do another 30 seconds. Okay, so I just heated it up for a second, 30 seconds, and it is hot now. And I can even start seeing like a film almost starting to cover it, which is good. So basically what I'm gonna do, I will pour it onto my chips, try to get all of it out just to keep the ratio.
Also, why not?
And why not? Let's not waste. And then I'm just gonna kind of make sure it's all covered. And then just let it sit for a little while and soften the chips.
So you melted your cream in the microwave. Tell me how to do it on the stovetop in case,
Yeah.
I don't have a microwave.
Exactly. Also, when I'm doing large batches, I like to put it on a bain-marie because I can just do it in bigger batches. So on the bain-marie, what you do, so you're gonna fill the pot about yay high. You don't want the boiling water to touch the bottom of your glass thing, but you want it to be like steaming underneath, creating this hot like little oven down there.
And do you want it to fit fairly tight? Because I know some bowls will give you kind of like a little bit of a hole, or do you want it to fit like a tight fitting lid?
The only thing is anytime you're using chocolate, you want to avoid water getting into it.
The steam
the steam from the thing. You want to try to, like, I like this because it's got a really high lip. That way the steam doesn't get into the bowl. And granted, right now, we're not actually doing the chocolate immediately, we're doing the cream first. So right now you would pour the cream in, and you would let it heat on the stove like that. And then you would take it off, add your chocolate, and let it sit right there. Then, instead of microwaving it to continue to melt, I would just put it back on the thing and melt it on here. So really, you've already added the cream. It's probably gonna be safe and not ever seize on you, but you always just want to be careful.
So when you're doing larger batches though, this is your preferred method? Just because this would take a lot longer?
Exactly. I'd have to like really microwave a lot and that would drive me crazy. So this way I can control it, it's a lot. Okay, so once it's sat for a little while and softened the chips, it might not be like immediately smooth, but you're going to get your spatula in there and try to stir it around, mix it around. What we're trying to do is emulsify the two ingredients together without creating a ton of bubbles. So you don't really want to incorporate a lot of air. You are going to scrape the bottom, make sure any things that have settled on the bottom get in there. And then the fun part with ganache, and this is what we'll want to show you close up, is how it comes together.
It's like magic.
It is. It's like magic.
Because there's kind of like this happy place where then all of a sudden you're making, you're like,
Why would it come together?
It's working. It's working. But so I think especially when we're doing things like a cake drip or something in class, people are like, I ruined it. I'm like, no, you just gotta keep going. Yes.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
So if I wanted to say flavor this, would I be adding flavor to the chocolate, to the cream, or wait till it's all mixed together?
It kind of depends.
Okay.
If you're gonna do something like an espresso flavor and you want to steep the cream in the beans, you could do that.
Okay.
Or like some people do like an Earl Grey tea type thing. You're gonna steep the cream, like sieve out all the pieces, and then the cream is flavored. You can do a salted caramel ganache, which is really delicious, and that you would actually just add the salted caramel along with it all at the same time.
In with the chocolate and everything.
In with the chocolate and everything. You don't necessarily, it's just kind of like if you're adding butter or corn syrup to make it especially shiny, you can do that at the same time as everything else and just kind of whisk it together.
But any like aromatics or things like that are generally best flavoring the cream.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. You're just going to do tiny little stirring movements in the center of the bowl. This also helps prevent a lot of air being stirred into the mix. And it is so fun to watch the center of the bowl start to get dark and shiny.
It gets a little thicker too.
Yeah,
right? You can feel a little resistance.
Yeah, a little thick, a little dark, shiny, and then it kind of comes together like that, and it's so fun. It's coming together like to get the outside and kind of bring it in, and then just keep going. Now, I still have a ton of little chips in here that haven't melted, so once I have it generally combined, I'm going to stick it back in the microwave and keep doing maybe like 20-30 seconds at a time.
Okay.
Nothing more than that. You don't want to overheat it. It will really separate at that point. But it is pretty forgiving when you're remelting it. So it's okay. Don't stress about that. Okay. And I can see it even getting thicker.
It is, yeah.
After I've fully melted all the chips in it.
Which is interesting because you would think after reheating it, it would get thinner because you're melting it. But it's just a combination of all those things.
Exactly.
Emulsifying, right?
Yep, it's that ratio coming fully together, because before it was a lot of cream and less melted chocolate, and now it's like the perfect chocolate and cream together.
You got longer arms.
Yeah, I was gonna say too short. Isn't that so pretty? Okay, this is the stage that you want to fill up a drip bottle. If you're gonna drip a cake, you're gonna want to fill it with this when you're wanting to use it before it can have time to set. This is also a time that if you're gonna fill like a tart, this is when you will want to fill a piping bag and use it while it's still running.
Just because it's more accurate to get inside, right? Like,
well, honestly, for a tart, you want it runny because it's gonna, so as chocolate sets, it will hold its shape. And if it's semi-solid and you try to fill a tart, you're just gonna get like kind of like a lumpy dark. I mean, it's not very appetizing. So you want it to be really runny and smooth so that it will settle completely and flat in your tart. Right. It's always gonna be this like truffle consistency. Yes. And the more like if you did want to play with the ratios for like a more runny or a more stiff consistency, you can definitely do that, like a 2-to-1 ratio for truffles. A lot of people, I think Ruth does that for her fillings, for her little chocolate fillings, or chocolate bonbons. Yeah. But it's totally up to you, and just know that you will have to play with it to make sure it works for you. I'm gonna fill my piping bag with a little bit of Ganache. Super easy. Wipe your thing clean with the bag. This is what I do whenever I fill my macarons or my tarts. This is how I store it in a piping bag. It's airtight, it's easy. I don't need to put it in like a Tupperware. I can just twist, I put it in a cup like this in the fridge, and it will last a month.
A month?
A month.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, you mentioned storage.
Yes.
So sometimes I love to be able to make something ahead of time, especially if I'm making fun treats. I don't want to be making it the hour before everybody's showing up. So this is something you can easily
make ahead thing.
Yes.
And it, like I said, it is very forgiving. So like I will put this in the fridge in a little cup, and I'll keep it, and even with the cut tip, it's totally fine. I will then remelt it in the microwave in this bag, and then sort of massage it until it's all melted and nice. Sometimes it gets really runny. Sometimes I'll have to cut it, put it in a bag, stir it again just to make sure it's all nice, and then put it back in the bag. But
much easier than trying to make a day of.
much easier. So you're gonna cut it up so you don't like chisel out. Just a little tip. And then I take my tart shell, and then I'm just gonna squeeze all the way up in the center as it's touching, and then it just settles.
Hold it up there.
Yeah. And then it settles nice and flat. You're gonna go right flush to the edge,
jiggle,
right? Pop it in the fridge and it will solidify and set to like the perfect consistency. It's just like so good.
So if I wanted to say top it with some chocolate curls or maybe a raspberry, would you put it in now or wait till it has set up a little bit?
So you'll want to wait till it's set up to almost set. Like
Okay.
not so it'll roll right off and it has no stickiness to it, but that it won't sink completely into the thing.
So if I would add it now,
could.
I would just kind of.
You could let it sink in and have a hidden raspberry.
But
It
who
would be
doesn't want a
delicious.
beautiful raspberry on top?
Right? It'd be so pretty. So we'll let it sit there for a little bit and then we can add some
Okay.
toppings.
And these are just pre-made chocolate shells that we sell. We love these for a quick on-hand treat, especially if you're craving some chocolate in the afternoon.
They're really good.
If you've got this in the fridge, make one of these. It's
Yeah.
gonna feel way more decadent than the Snickers bar
Yeah.
at a gas station.
Okay, if you want to do a drip, like on a cake, you are going to, like I said, use it at this runny consistency, and you're gonna fill a drip bottle, or you can do it out of the piping bag as well. Whichever you prefer. It's sort of like a muscle memory thing,
Yes.
whatever you get used to as you learn how to do. Some people do it with a spoon, just directly onto the cake, which is totally
That
fine
is
too.
talent,
Right?
and I can hold this up if you want.
I'm just gonna do a few spoonfuls.
I also think that the thing that I love about doing a drip with a squeeze bottle is that if it does start to harden, it's a little bit easier to
So
kind
much
of
easier.
like maneuver it in there.
Yeah.
We're in a piping bag,
You can microwave it too, straight in this.
but it just gets a little bit more hidden
Yeah.
in there.
Now, drips, it's like a whole other conversation about like making sure your cake is really chilled and making sure the ganache isn't too hot that it melts your cake, because that's happened before.
Yes.
But in general, you're gonna put your ganache in your squeeze bottle, kind of get it down to about a 45-degree angle and watch it come to the tip. This is our little fake
Our
cake.
fake cake.
You're gonna get it to the edge, and you're gonna squeeze as you rotate your cake. Normally you'd have like a turntable or something. Squeeze, rotate, squeeze, rotate, squeeze. So that's like the classic drip. There's also like a curtain drip, which is really fun. I'm sure there are other names for it, but that is really fun, where you literally just can do a consistent amount of pressure. You don't pick it up. You just let it
Oh.
go along the edge like that, and then it like drips like a curtain down the side of the cake.
Yes.
That's really fun.
I've never heard it referred to as that name.
So there. So the way that I get it to a different consistency, because right now it's like liquid, and if I wanted to let it harden up, I would do it overnight, or I would do it in the fridge. Sometimes if you cool it too fast, it will separate. And you'll get sort of like a grainy consistency, or even you'll start seeing like a fat, like a yellow fat layer that's bloomed off of it, and that can be frustrating. And it is chocolate, so you have to remember there are different stages of crystallization, so it will need to go slow and usually at room temperature. Now sometimes it's really hot, so just stick it in the fridge. I wouldn't stick it in the freezer necessarily, but let it kind of slowly come to a different temperature. Okay, so what I like to do to make it more solid so that I can use it for, let's say, a cake, to cover a cake, I will pour it into a lined dish so that it has more surface area and it's not as deep, and it will solidify faster. And then I can more easily scrape it out of this. So I'll like flatten it out. I will cover it with another thing of plastic wrap so it doesn't form a skin on top. You never want that. So always cover it with a plastic wrap right up to the edge, like as if it was a pudding. You're always gonna cover it so there's no like bubbles. And then let it sit and solidify overnight.
Overnight, okay.
Yeah. Yes.
What if I don't want it to get crazy hard? So can I leave it just out on the counter?
Yes.
How long have you
You can
Been able to
leave
do that.
it out on the counter for at least 3 days. So it is very
Which is
shelf
crazy because
stable.
you think about cream left out on the counter.
Right?
Wait, what?
I know. And it's very, very shelf stable. So a lot of bakers, and especially wedding cake artisans, they prefer Ganache because they don't have to use their refrigerator space.
Yes.
So they will leave their cake out and it will totally hold fine. And it's like completely sealed, so there's no chance that bacteria or anything will get inside. It's kind of amazing. Once this is solidified, then you peel off the top layer, and then you can literally either like pull it out completely or cut it and microwave bits at a time. It's awesome. So I will like either pull the whole thing out and dump it into a bowl and microwave that and use it for my cake, or I will just cut a slice off or whatever portion I need of it. So you don't have to use the whole thing.
And earlier we talked about how you actually will use a ganache to make the most decadent hot chocolate. So is that what you would do, is cut it into pieces, the same ratio?
You can.
Okay.
You can totally do that. I actually do my chocolate bombs at Christmas, the hot chocolate bombs.
Yeah.
I don't do the powder mix.
Okay.
I fill it with Ganache.
Oh.
So then it melts and it's like real hot chocolate.
Awesome. Awesome.